Hi, this is Jan from Log Cabin Leather. And if you don't know me, I'm celebrating now 46 years since I started making handmade leather products. So as part of my celebration this month, today I'm going to share with you some of the mistakes and the blunders I've made over the years. Now, of course, I don't have really photographs to back up a lot of this because back when I started, it was 30, was cameras that you had to take the film and have it developed and so forth. And a lot of those pictures, again, have gone by the wayside and so forth. So the first and the biggest mistake and the, thing that I needed to learn, probably the most important, is what type of leather to use for what type of product. Now, my first thing I ever made was this leather vest, which, again, I went to the company, the owner of the company, Jeff Siegel. I told him what I was going to make, sold me the piece of leather. So this is garment leather. For clothing, you want something soft, supple. You want it to be somewhat water resistant and things like that so that it's going to wear well. If you're making something like a tote bag or a pair of shoes, you may want something different, or moccasins or something. You want it to be a heavy leather that it's going to last. A belt, you want it to be a heavy leather. You don't want it to be real thin like this. Some leathers are going to stretch more than others and things like that. So the first thing that I really didn't know was about the tannage. And one of the biggest earlier mistakes I made was, again, using the wrong leathers for the wrong products. One of the things I did is I made a leather vest, and I did not use garment leather. Somebody had given me some leather, so again, trying to save money and stuff when I was first starting out. They'd seen the vest I made for myself. This is really upholstery leather. Now, this happens to be white, but I also had this in a tan color, and I made this vest. And again, this is the only way I have to show it because it's a photograph of the product years and years ago. So I can't replicate it or anything, so that's it. It's not on any film I really could find anymore. So, this is kind of stiff. It's not going to be comfortable. It's not going to soften. This leather, again, softens, get nicer with age, you get, and so forth. This is not going to do that. It has a water repellent finish on it, which is, again, part of the difference in tanning. Chrome tan leather is more water repellent, things like that. It's made for different things. So that was one of the biggest mistakes. The other mistake I made is I tried to dye the chrome tan leather. This leather was more a light color, an off-white. Again, this I even think I dyed a little bit. This was a little bit lighter color leather and more creamy color maybe, and I dyed it. And so, not the greatest. It came out okay, but really that's not what you're supposed to do with that kind of leather. It already has a finish and so forth on. Also, that kind of leather you cannot carve, you cannot put pictures on, anything like that, which is why most of the products I made, and I did learn this from an early age, I put my pictures on a different kind of leather. The other thing about leather is it comes in all different thicknesses, and there's so many different kinds of leathers and thicknesses and so forth. So this is leather to make a belt. It is very thick, it is stiff. This is also what's called vegetable tanned leather. It is a thinner piece. It comes in ounces. It comes in, not quite this thin, but it comes fairly thin, like to make a wallet and so forth. It comes in all different thicknesses. Now, I found a certain weight I like to do my pictures on and so forth. So when I'm carving something, I like to have it a certain weight. Chrome tan leather, again, is softer, more supple. A lot of times it's more waterproof and so forth, but you can't put any designs on it. You can't carve a picture onto this leather itself. It won't accept it. Things like that. Now, there's a tannage in between that I have that you're supposed to be able to put designs on. I didn't find that worked either, but that was something I discovered later on. Another problem I had, and kind of things I discovered myself, because I am a self-taught leather artist, are fasteners and things like that. Now, belts were my best seller way back when I started. All my belts attached with a snap, because that's what everybody did back then in the 70s. They all snapped on, so you could remove and put your fancy buckles on, which were a real big thing back then. I used to have a display case that would hold 100 of these buckles once, and I would sell them at the shows to go with the belts and so forth. But if the snap breaks, then the belt's no good anymore, and especially if you are taking buckles on and off of it frequently, a lot of times that would happen, and the belt would be no good. So then I went in and so forth. So that was another thing. As far as the hardware goes, kind of this goes back to the vest. Originally, when this vest was made, it was basically a simplicity sewing pattern, which is what a lot of I used to make actually quite a few vests, and then I realized that wasn't really fun because I like the carving and blood. And this had a buckle on the back. Well, a buckle is very uncomfortable if you're sitting driving to craft shows and stuff, which is where I would wear the vest most of the time. It was very uncomfortable, so I ended up removing the buckle. Now, you think I would have learned from that lesson, but then when I wanted to design a special kind of belt for myself, kind of Western style, Westerns are my favorite kind of shows, I wanted something with a fancy kind of design that was going to be more contoured when it went on your waist. I can't hold it in my waist so you can see it, but trying to fasten it. So the original one I made of these, it buckled. Now, what the problem was, it had this design panel that's larger in the front. So it does need to feed through the holes through the front, because that's obviously not going to fit through a belt loop if you put it on with pants or something. But I needed that to be in the center. So to try to figure out, I figured, oh, I'll put a buckle on it. And you can buckle in the back. And, depending on how it buckles, a buckle might not be exactly in the center. But, again, the belt's going to, you're going to have this in the center. Well, guess what? The buckle hurts when you sit down. So that was a lesson that took me a couple times to learn. What I went on to after that, again, back to the snap thing. I started using snaps and making it snap at the end. And so you can snap it around your waist. And mess up my camera here. You can snap it around your waist. Like that. But again, the snaps can waist. This wasn't as adjustable as some belts, because back then when I was making these, when you bought a snap, it comes with the 4 parts of a snap. A snap has 4 parts to it. It has the upper part of the snap, which has kind of the button design piece. The inner part of that, which is a female part of the snap. And then the male part of the snap has that piece and that piece, and you need all 4 to make one snap. Well, back then, they did not sell the separate pieces. So if I wanted to make this adjust more than once, like I have it here, so I can adjust the size, I've now ruined another snap. There's 2 pieces to the snap, or a half of the snap, that I can't use anymore. That since has changed, because now the companies do sell the individual pieces, because a lot of people do make components like that. So that was my next one, and that was okay. But later on, I discovered these button studs, which I also use for belts. So this works perfect. I have them on either side. So this belt, it just hooks in, and I can pop it into the holes. I can adjust it on either side and make it, so I can wear it with jeans, and I can wear it up on a dress on my waist, things like that. And I was using those on belts for a while, but then again, for a belt for a guy, if it's that kind of belt, and see I had 2 of them, and so it has to be adjusted perfect so it will line up with a hole. So these were not something I could custom fit unless they were ordered online, like at a craft show. That was much harder, to get it the right size. But they tend to stretch and pull a little bit, that style. So recently I found something that I like very much. It's called, it's this hook, and it's a metal, you can't see it in the bag, it's a metal piece, and it's sewn into the layers of the belt and the hook, and it rivets inside and so forth, which you don't really see, but it rivet, so it's a bigger metal piece, and that goes inside, and then you put the holes in, so that works a little bit better. So that's what I use now. So again, that was something I learned about hardware. Snaps, again, can disintegrate, don't work. You could not get, halves and so forth. But now you can. So that have stitching. Stitching is another thing. When I first started, everything was stitched by hand. So you've got your hand sewing, stitching there, which you have to punch the stitches with a fork by hand. You have things like this, which I hand stitched the loon picture on there. You have to, and then I had to punch the lacing holes and make the lacing. And then there's, of course, this kind of lacing. Again, for leather, you have to punch the holes ahead of time for hand sewing because it's very stiff. So the hardest thing is getting the seams to line up. So what I learned over time is you need to glue the seams. You need to let it dry. And then You punch the holes. And what I learned also is, because I'm cutting by hand, so my things are not exactly always perfectly cut even. I'm using, I use things like a square ruler and a rotary cutter to cut things. But it's, I'm not perfect at times, and, so I can mess up. So what I've learned when I'm making like a book cover or something, or making something like this, the pockets inside, I'm going to make a little bit larger than what they're going to be when they're finished. So the edges are going to stick out here when it's glued together. I'm going to punch the holes, and then I'm going to trim it afterwards. And that way they line up better, and I'm sure that the seams are going to be even. Because otherwise, it's hard. This is, again, those are lined up pretty good. That the edges are even here, so the pieces inside, and so forth. But again, many different leathers. If you're making a wallet, you need a much thinner leathers for the interior. I liked a little bit thicker leather so I could carve the pictures and so forth, but then it makes a wallet bulky, things like that. So again, stitching by hand was a process and expensive. I did get a machine, but I honestly struggle with my machine and the tension, and so it doesn't loop the stitches and sews nicely. And so that's something to this day I still struggle with. Not anybody around here that I can ask for help with that, so it's kind of, online it's not exactly easy to find out what you're doing either. Coloring leather, again, I mentioned that I was coloring the chrome tan leather. I learned to use, eventually I learned to use acrylic paint and thin layers put on. This is, again, made in 1980. My catalog there, that was 1978. The paint holds up. So I figured that one out fairly quick, and obviously it still works. The other thing, again, last thing I'm really going to mention here, I tried to make all the products that people asked me to. I mean, originally I started with, like, the tennis bag was from my dad. He was a tennis player. It had a function. I did things like, my parents were both smokers, cigarette cases, Bic lighter holders, tobacco pouches, something to hold my father's pipe. I mean, all sorts of things like that, because I was making things for them. As things went on and I did craft shows, people, oh, this would be great if you could make this. Or I like this idea, but I'd like it to have this on it instead. Or this would be great. Or how about do something with moose? Or how do something with bear? So I tried to please everybody. I even did things like shoes. This was my first, and again, pair of clogs, not really made out of a kind of leather you would want for that. Now this is the vegetable tan leather, but it is a little stiff for this. If I didn't have too many other choices if you wanted to put designs on it, but again, should be molded around a form and so forth, really, to make a shoe. Clogs. I was making clogs for a while. You could buy the soles and stuff. But again, so many different sizes and so forth. How many dozens of shoes could I keep in stock? So the biggest thing I learned over these 46 years, and I didn't really learn this till recently, is to narrow down my focus. I cannot please everybody all the time. Trying to make all the products that people ask for, I can't do it. Not to make them quality, not to really put the details and the time into it. Obviously, the more you make something, the easier it becomes to do, like belts. I pretty much have down to a science, even stamping the designs and so forth, because that's something I do a lot of. I can streamline. If I try to please everybody, I am buying hundreds of different kinds of leathers, because all different thicknesses, all different colors, all different, tannages for different purposes. That's a lot of money invested. Narrowing down, I can narrow down on buying the several different kinds of vegetable tan for my jewelry and the belts and the different leathers, for some of the tote bags and things like that. But that's where I'm going now, because pleasing everybody is, it's really costing me time and money, and who to market to. The one thing I must say, like, again, my main lines now are my belts, my jewelry, the tote bags, and guitar straps are another one, which mine are really unique and different. But again, that's a little bit different customer base than some of the other products are, and that's where I struggle with too, because some of my products are more geared for men, some of my products are geared more for women. The belts are the best seller for both, so where to go, I can't do one or the other. So that's where I'm at now. That's Gonna wrap it up for now. Again, look for links to join. I have a special discount code club where you can get a special discount each month and save on products on my website, different deals each month and so forth moving forward. I'm just starting this now, so you need to sign up. You will get an instant discount when you do sign up, and then at the beginning of each month, you'll get the discount for that month. It can be applied during my sales, which I have a sale the third week of the month. So follow me on Facebook or subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you'll find out more about these things coming up. Thank you very much. Have a great day. Bye.